Alright, hello. This video is purely for the purpose of going over issues with consistency in the Longsword for those who are confused as to why certain things feel wrong or off, or maybe I directed you to this video because you have no idea what I'm talking about. This is not a guide. For this section, we're going over the Foresight Slash. First thing to note is Foresight Slash has two different functionalities or versions, dependent on whether you have Spirit Meter or not. And when I say Spirit Meter, I mean this little bar here, specifically not the colored gauge that you consume to use Helmbreaker. Talking about the bar that fills up slowly from attacks, is consumed to use the Spirit Blade combo, and will slowly regen when you hit an EI Slash. In this first section here, funnily, I immediately proved myself wrong with a discussion I was having with somebody the other day about not being able to have any iframes. However, in the slow-mo here, you can see that it is at the very start, and throughout the rest of the video, you'll see that it is effectively just those couple frames. Alright, let's look at that again, but frame by frame. We have the start, the thrust, not yet, not yet. I'm not sure if this, like, slight movement counts. I don't think it does. And then you have the start of the animation, and I think I'm getting hit at the same frame, but the stamina doesn't change until the frame after, so we'll say it's 2 frames of an iframe. So I have a bunch of examples in this section of the video going over near misses and successful iframes. So the big thing is, as far as I'm aware, the iframes are only for the first, I think, 3 frames? It's 2 or 3, because I'm fairly certain at 4 you get hit out of it, and there's one example later on in the video that showcases that pretty well. I'm not going to go over all of them, that would just take a ton of time, but if anybody wants to go through, you can obviously do that yourself through the video, but just wanted to go through this one in particular to show just how tight the framing is. So starting off with a great one as a juxtaposition for the slow-mos is this right here, where it's the first just little bit and immediately knocked over. So something you'll have noticed by now is the difference between a successful iframe and an unsuccessful iframe is extremely difficult to tell if you don't know what you're looking for, and even then it's so tiny that it is just not a consistent way to use this ability. If you're using it without any meter, you may as well not use it at all. And this last bit right here of this section is just to show you the normal breadth of the iframes and just how different they are from the iframes without. Now this next section is just a small showcase of Helm Splitter, another skill that for the longest time in the beginning of the game's release and the beta, a lot of people said, oh, the thrust that brings you into the skill, you have super armor. That's only half true. So as you saw just now, you get it at the beginning backstep, but during the stab, the moment you start moving forward, it does not function anymore for the rest of the skill until you're ready to use your release slash. And this final section here in this specific clip, we're going over to be thorough the fact that you can, in fact, upgrade your gauge without any meter. But this final section was supposed to be going over the inconsistency of EI Spirit Slash, and as far as I'm aware, there is a bug with it. However, in the training area, it's pretty inconsistent. to be able to replicate. I couldn't find any egregious example, only maybe a frame or two of difference in where the iframes ended. But to explain the alleged bug I'm talking about is effectively at the very, very end of your iframes, it feels as though a movement input or some form of cancellation of the actual iframes is happening. It's usually at the very, very end and maybe only a handful of frames, which would explain why it's not really something that is very talked about, because EI Spirit Slash's iframes are very, very, very front-loaded, and it feels like sometimes you can parry before you even start the animation. But it is something that I'm fairly certain isn't just a skill issue, because if it was a skill issue, I would be happy with that, because that means there's something that I could do to change it. But there do seem to be some things that are a little bit inconsistent with it at the very, very end. I'm unsure if it's an FPS problem, or if it's a ping problem. I'm fairly certain it's not a ping problem, because every time I encounter it, it is almost always in single player. So I'm not too certain where to go with that. I'll have to just try and record and see if I can find an egregious case at any point in the future. But that's the video, and thanks for watching if you got this far. Also, just as a little disclaimer, I am aware that when I say frame by frame or frames, it's my editing software, not necessarily game frames, so there might be a little bit of a difference, but for the purpose of demonstration, it works. And this last bit was mostly just to explain the bug, not necessarily showcase the bug. And just as a final aside, I am aware that this very well could just be a massive placebo effect, and it's not actually an issue, and I just figured the iframes would extend deeper into the animation than they actually do, and it felt wrong and unintuitive, and it just got brainworms about, oh my god, this skill is wrong, there must be something wrong with it. Who knows? But anyway, thanks.